Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and very good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining the virtual Islamic Banking and Finance series. This event is part of initiatives taken by INSAF Alumni Unit together with Career and Student Services. Other than providing a student alumni faculty networking platform, the objective of this Islamic Banking and Finance series is to provide a platform for INSAF faculty members and industry experts to share new insights and also to discuss current issues within the Islamic finance industry that can benefit students and also our alumni. In today's session will be on the importance of sustainable economic growth, nexus of growth, SDGs and Maqasid Al-Shari'ah. That will be delivered by Associate Professor Dr. Baru Abdul Hamid. Before we start, just a gentle reminder, please ensure that your microphone is on mute throughout the session. If you have any question, you may ask question directly to the speaker or type your question in the chat area. Please introduce yourself by mentioning your name and where you are from before asking any question to the speaker. Without any further delay, I will hand over the session to our speaker. Over to you, Dr. Baru.
Thank you very much, my dear brother Azrul. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome all. Salam Jumaah Barakah. First of all, my sincere gratitude, my dear brothers here, Nur Hisham and Azrul, as well as Sister Shakira, and I could see some very familiar names. First of all, thank you for attending. I would say this is a more a sharing session. I would say this is more an enlightening session. I would like to take this opportunity to actually for us to really embrace, institutionalize what is meant by Maqasid, what is meant by sustainable development goals. Whenever we talk about any long-term blueprints or growth plan of a country, of a nation, of an economy, sometimes we have the wrong perception, sometimes we have the wrong view. We think that it's the responsibility of the policymakers. We think that it's the task of the ministries. It is the job of the ministers. It is the job of the respective agencies. In fact, all of us have our own roles and tasks. Just give me a second so that I could share my screen here. Okay, hold on. Just me stop sharing this. Just give me a second. I could not find my PowerPoint. Hold on, just give me a second here. Okay, there it is. Okay. So what I would like to actually do to trigger, to provoke, to share and to instill the responsibility of us, each and every one of us, as a caliph in this world that have been given responsibility to administer, as an employee in our certain organization, as well as some of you might be bosses of your own firms, how we can all contribute together. Any macro level, national level, economic level policies would fail to achieve the objectives if we do not have the support and the contribution of each of the micro unit. So when we talk about a micro unit, it's all of us. So all of us have an equal responsibility, if not more responsibility, compared to all the policymakers. The policymakers just makes policy. The policymakers make forecast. The policymakers makes estimation. The policymakers make goals. But the task is all of us. If you're old enough, or if you could do some reading, about 2-3 decades ago, every other country, every other region, every other economist was talking about being a high-income country. Everybody wants to be a high-income country. But then in the 1990s, they realized towards their journey being a high-income country, there are many collateral damages. There are many misleading indicators. Because the indicator of a high-income country itself is an indicator of an average of income per capita in the respective economy or respective country or respective nation. So what happens is the wealth of the nation is controlled by a very small segment of the population, indirectly resulting the nation's GDP per capita to look good on paper. But the collateral damage, there are a lot of poor people. The income inequality widens. The environment takes a beating. So in 1990s, the focus at that point of time by the United Nations as well as the other international organization was looking at the poverty and was looking at the income inequality. So together they came up with what is called Millennium Development Goals. Millennium Development Goals was in the late 90s, expected to be accelerated after the millennia, where the specific target was to reduce poverty. The specific target was to reduce income inequality. But then they realized again, the goal was too small. There were other collateral damages to the environment, to the other livings, as well as between gender, between region, between states, and so on. Again, somewhere back in 2014, bring back everybody to the table, including representatives from Malaysia. They came out with a new framework. They said, okay, we are going to have 17 targets which we intend collectively to achieve in 2030. Thus, born Sustainable Development Goals. But then again, we are so excited whenever we see this kind of jargons, the rhetoric from the Westerners, and we quickly embrace them without realizing we have already a good sustainable framework, which is known as the Maqasid. But because of the gimmick, because of the marketing and everything, everybody realized, oh, sustainable development goal. The Westerners are thinking about everything. It is a good thing. Thus, this is where the whole world globally, including Malaysia, as part of the signatory, targeted to what? Sustainable development. And not high-income country, but sustainable development. What does sustainable development means in a nutshell? Sustainable development means you grow as a country, but at the same time, nobody is left out. No region is left out. No religion is left out. No race is left out. No skin color is left out. No gender is left out. So there are two important jargons here. One is inclusive. The second is sustainable. So now everybody was talking about inclusive and sustainable economy. Put aside high income, put aside being a rich country, put aside. We want to be inclusive. We want to be sustainable. So what does inclusive mean? Inclusive means nobody is left out. When we say nobody is left out, it's true geographical. So I will be sharing with you some of the latest statistics One of them is statistics that have been just released this morning by the Economic Planning Unit on the states of Malaysia. I'll be sharing with you in a short while. Inclusive means no region is left out. In the context of Malaysia, we have Peninsular Malaysia, we have East Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak. So we want everybody to grow together. Within Peninsular Malaysia, we do not only want the developed states such as Penang, Klang Valley and Johor. And what about the others? No, we want everybody to grow. So when we say we want everybody to grow, everybody have a different starting point. So this is where we need to differentiate between equal, being equal or equitable, and being fair. When we say equal in a layman term, let me give you, if you have 50 ringgit and you have 5 people who needs those money, equal means you give 10 ringgit to each of them. Fair means, on the other hand, those who are vulnerable and fragile, who needs most assistance, would be given the most help or the most assistance or the most money. So this is where it is different. Because if you keep on practicing equitable, equal, it will be like parallel. When are we going to close the gap? So we have to assist those who are left out. So that's the whole thing about Sustainable Development Goal, SDGs. If you read about the SDG framework is talking about targeted assistance. SDG framework is talking about targeted group that needs to be helped the most. When we say targeted group, we look at 2 things: vulnerability, fragility. Vulnerability and fragility means those who are the most exposed, those who are the most feeling the impact. So this is where once you have the most vulnerable and fragile group, then you will slowly close the income inequality gap, and then we can prosper together. We can share the wealth of the world together. So in the context of Malaysia, this is where we are talking about the Shared Prosperity Value 2030, which is actually specifically developed, synchronized with the SDGs. Even the dates are same, 2030. So how we are going to achieve that? We are going to achieve that by helping targeted assistance, giving targeted assistance to the most vulnerable group. So if you look at the inequalities that is happening now, not only in the context of Malaysia, if you look at any other region, there are differences in the social, there are differences in the economics, there are differences in the environmental factors, there are differences in the socio-economic and so on. So first of all, before even we start of this journey about talking about sustainable development, the first thing needs to be done is identification. When we say identification, where are we now? What kind of inequality that is happening? Are there any inequalities between the races? Are there any inequalities between the genders? Are there any equality between the states? Are there any inequality between the region? That is what we need to do. First, we have to identify. Once we have identified the inequalities, second, we have to measure the gap. How far is the gap? How big is the inequality? Once we identified how big is the inequality, how big is the gap, now we say, who is the most vulnerable? Which region, which group, which race, which skin color, which gender? Then only we would plan, okay, now we need to identify, we need to give targeted assistance to these groups first. So in order for them to come and close the gap first. I'll give you even in a very layman term, another layman term. You know, some of you are the bosses of your firms. Some of you have your own companies. Some of you have your own organization, own institution. Very layman. When you announce you know, your company is doing well, your firm is doing well, your institution is doing well, and you want to share the profit that your company have made, you want to share the wealth the company have made for the last year, what should you do? The first thing that you should do is, whenever you declare an additional bonus or dividend or whatever it is, it should not be on an equal term. It should not be 1 month across the board, 3 months across the board, or 2 months according to performance. No, this is where you need to come back. Which is the most vulnerable group within your organization, within your institution? Are there any female and male gender gap in terms of income they are earning? Is there a difference between the income inequality of the lowest income earner compared to the CEO? So this is where you need to come up with, okay, now I have this. So in order for me to reduce the inequality, I need to give a bigger portion, need to share the biggest portion of the wealth or the revenue or the profit that I have made to the lower income group. I need to share with the female staff. For example, hypothetically, I'm saying. So indirectly, within a micro setup, you are already helping the nation to achieve a sustainable development goal. You're already helping the global in achieving the sustainable development goal. These are some of the things that we do not foresee. We miss these kind of things. A simple, I'm just giving you one simple example that things happening. Okay. So when we say inclusive, again, I say inclusive. Inclusive means nobody is left out. No groups are left out. No regions are left out, be it geographically or be it otherwise. So in the context of Malaysia, that's how, after we sign off with the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG by the United Nations, whenever we prepare a budget, the national budget, if you could realize, the bigger portion would be going to the states, which is the poorest. The biggest portion should go to the states which is lagging in development. Then only we can grow as a nation. It is not about being proud, oh, Malaysia's GDP per capita have touched 18,000 USD. We have came a long way from the 1990s and we are proud of that. And when we looked at the detail of it, we realized that average of 18,000 USD is actually inflated by only a small portion, 3 to 5% of the salaried workers in Malaysia. And the majority of them are still lagging. And what happens? The income inequality still gets wider and wider. The gap becomes bigger and bigger. So when we say inclusive, nobody is left out. When we say sustainable, that means you sustain the growth for a long period. We do not want to have a growth of double digit this year and next year we go back into negative growth. That is not sustainable. That is not what is ideal. What we want sustainable. We want is sustainable, the policies to be inclusive this year and the next year and the following year and so on. So we do not only want to be inclusive, we want also to be sustainable. We do not only want to be sustainable, but we also want to be inclusive. When only we tick both the box, and it is not only we talk at the time of every September, first week of September, or every election, or every end of the year. No, it has to be continuous. These efforts needs to be continuous. And this is where I'm going to share with you later a small video of the activities that we are doing on a micro level, which is all targeted to be inclusive and sustainable. So an inclusive and sustainable economic approach, not only by the policy makers, not only by the ministers or the ministries, not only by the agencies, but as well as the private sector, as well as the people, rakyat, we all. All of us have a role to play So this is where I would like to enlighten you. Sometimes when you ask a person, so what do you think about SDG? What you should do about SDG? How can we contribute to SDG? And sometimes it's sad to hear, oh, I don't think I can do anything on SDG. I think that is the policymakers. Oh, I think that those are the bosses. Oh, I think that's the government agencies. And this is the wrong thinking, wrong perception. No, each of us have a role to play. We can play a role within our community. The first thing you need to do, like what I have said earlier, in your community, in the place where you are staying, are there any poor people? Is the income inequality wide? Are there any gender? Are there a gender inequality? Are there any race inequality? So how for you to close doors within that? There are many activities that you can do if you can identify. And if you have a role to play either in the community as a residential association member or the mosque committee member or any other member, all you could do, okay, we have 5% of us who are well-to-do, but we have 20% who are asnaf. How for us to eradicate this asnaf? Let us do a simple eradication within our community. So if you can do these kind of activities within your community, within your institution, within your organization, within your firms, then we could accelerate. Then as a nation, we can move together. Then globally, we can move together. Remember, when we say inclusive, we are talking about no inequalities, no differences in inequalities between race, between religion, between gender, between region, between states, and so on. And also remember, if the inequality becomes so bad, it can cause chaotic situation in a community, in a state, in a country. Malaysia have gone through that. Something we would like to forget. But historically, it already happened. All of us know what happened in May 13, 1969. The root of it was economic inequality between races. Okay? So when we talk about inclusive and sustainable growth, remember these two words, two important words, inclusive and sustainable. It doesn't work when you only have one of it. It doesn't work if you only have sustainable without inclusive. It doesn't work if you have inclusive without sustainable. Okay, and why we want it sustainable? We want it to be continuous. You do not want something which is only inclusive for the year 2022, then comes 2023, everybody forget, back to usual, business as usual. Okay, so like I said, when we talk about the growth of a country, growth of a nation, growth of Malaysia, we always have the ambition of increased prosperity. At the end of the day, dollar and cents matters. I agree. But what we want, the increased prosperity is shared by the whole nation. It's not an increased prosperity, like I keep repeating, like a broken record. An increased prosperity is only shared. It can give you a misleading indicator. When you look at it, and you know, everybody is proud, Malaysian GDP per capita have increased so much for the last 2-3 years. But you look at it, why are there so many poor people? Why are the hardcore poor keep increasing? Why the number of asnaf keep increasing? But you said Malaysian GDP per capita have been increasing. That means we are prosperous as a nation. Why? Because this growth is not inclusive. So it is not about measurement about GDP per capita alone. It's not a measurement of GDP alone. It's not a measurement of Malaysia. It's about the level of happiness of the people, level of satisfaction, the quality of life. How well distributed is the wealth of the nation? The same context, doesn't matter which country you come from, which part of the world you come from. For example, we have brothers from Pakistan here. You do not want, when we look at the GDP per capita of Pakistan, and it shows the GDP per capita in Pakistan have increased many folds for the last 5 years. But when you look at the regions, only Lahore have increased. Karachi, Sindh, and everybody has. No, we doesn't want that. Nobody wants that. That is the weakness of when you take an indicator which is calculated on an average. When even 5% or a small portion of the nation which is prospering as an outlier, it can inflate the indicator. So we want a growth where it's inclusive. And like I said, when we talk about inclusion, we consider equality of opportunity. We are not talking about equal, we are talking about equality of opportunities, and we are talking about fair distribution. Especially the outcomes for all. We're talking about sufficiency of living standards. We do not want a measurement which shows your GDP per capita is increasing by 5-fold, but at the same time, the cost of living have increased by 10-fold. You are actually poorer. Your purchasing power is actually worse than where were you before. And when we talk about inclusion, remember, of course, towards our journey, we have to keep on reducing the inequalities. And when we talk about inclusion and reducing inequalities, it has to be a comprehensive and inclusive and look at the bigger picture. We have to start it from inequality between gender, inequality between race, inequality between states, inequality between the regions, and so on. We want, as a nation, we prosper. We want, as a nation, we grow. But the growth is not only monopolized by only 3 states, Penang, Klang Valley, and Johor, but the other states are regressing. We do not want that. And in sustainability, what we are aiming is, we are aiming for environmental resilience. In 1990s, 1980s, we were so hard up. We were so desperate for the foreign direct investment that we opened our border, and we were basically begging people to come and invest in Malaysia, and we provided them cheap labor. We provided them so many incentives, tax-free for 5 years, 10 years, and so on. Where does that lead us to? It leads us to be labeled as pollution heaven. Why? Because we were so desperate of this foreign direct investment. We were so desperate of creation of employment. We let loose some regulation here and there. I'll give you one very important occasion. There was one big sports attire manufacturing company which originates from the United States. They could not manufacture the attire in the States because they were using a certain dye, a color, which is actually bad for the environment, which is banned in US and Europe. So what happened? They opened a factory, a manufacturing plant, one in Penang and the other one is in Kulim. They manufacture the textiles here, the attire here, and it was put in the bonded truck with made in US, sent back to them. Why we were so desperate at that time? At that time, we needed the money. We needed the job creation. But that led us for our environment to be deteriorating, as well as we were labeled pollution heaven. It was a wonderful heaven for all these kind of industries to come to Malaysia at that point of time. Okay, so now we have grown out of it. So we should not be going back to what we say being a pollution heaven. We should not be begging all this kind of cheap FDI that's coming just for the creation of the employment. We should be going for the high tech. But we have to ensure whatever that is coming in, the job creation that's being done, it has to be fair. It cannot be focused in only one state. It cannot be focused in a free trade zone area in Penang and Kuala Lumpur alone. It has to be spread out. If you realize the Indonesian government have made a decision to relocate the administrative to Nusantara. Why? Because they are embracing the sustainable development goals. They realized, remember when I said, what was the first step for us to do? The first step is identification of the gap. Who is left out? What is the gap? By how much are they left out? And they realized the Indonesian area in Kalimantan was one of those which is most vulnerable and fragile and left out. And they realized they needed the most assistance. What the Indonesian government did was purely copycating what Malaysia have done in relocating the administrative site to Putrajaya, but they are doing it on a different scale, and they are doing it not only on the political and administration, but as well as the economical side. We should raise a flag, red flag for Malaysia, because if we are not careful, if we do not make plans to embrace the positive spillovers from Nusantara to be enjoyed by Sabah and Sarawak, we would be further left out in ASEAN. We have already been left out by Singapore. Thailand is slowly overtaking us. Soon we will find ourselves even in Asia, ASEAN, we are placed somewhere number 4 or number 5. Okay. So remember, when we say about sustainable and inclusive growth, we want a growth that is giving benefit to every member of the population, to every area, every region of the country, every state and every region, every gender. But we cannot be giving equal assistance. Why? Because if you keep on giving the equal assistance and equal attention, it will be parallel. You cannot close the gap. So we have to give more assistance. This is what we call targeted assistance. We have to plan more in those states, those regions, those gender, those whatever who are left out, so that they can be closing the gap. So this is what I said, the latest statistics, which was actually released today. This is from the Economic Consultative Agency. Look, within the context of Malaysia, you have 2 axes here, and these are the statistics for the last 5 years, 2016 to 2020. Look carefully, we have 2 axes here. The y-axis here is the average growth of GDP. We are talking about state GDP here. State GDP is not widely available, publicly available. That's why this is something that is very useful and meaningful for you. At least you have a rough understanding. This is within the context of Malaysia. So you have the y-axis here, average growth of GDP. Axis here, you have the median monthly income in terms of ringgit Malaysia. Okay. So if you look this way on the x-axis, can you see by far Selangor is leading? We have an average median income of somewhere 7,500 by far, because the second closest state is Johor, then followed closely by Penang, and then Malacca. Which is the state with the lowest median income? The state of Kelantan. Okay, this is how you see from this side. If you look at the average GDP growth of the states, Selangor is heading the back, followed closely by Penang. And then we have some pleasant news here. We have good fast growth from Kelantan, Perak, Kedah, and Johor. And the lowest state with the lowest growth chalked by the state is the state of Sarawak. So if you take both of these and if you put in quadrants, so in this quadrant, we look at it from two angles. We look at it from the economic growth and we look at it from the income statement. So we have, of course, the first is what? The states that have already been mentioned by me earlier. And this is something everybody have expected. High income, fast growth, Selangor, Penang, and Johor. Low income, low growth, Sarawak, Sabah, Perlis, Pahang, Terengganu. And then you have here high income but slow growth, which is Malacca. And if you see here, low income, fast growth, you have Kelantan, Perak, and Kedah. You see, a peculiar pattern that you can actually look at it here. Penang, Johor, Malacca, Selangor. What is the most, what we call unique about this? What do they share? All these four states have a what we call free trade zone area. Selangor and Penang was the two of the earliest. They started having free trade zone from the 80s, followed by Johor, and then followed by Malacca. So this clearly, you can see gap between Selangor and Sarawak. Or you can see in the terms of income, Selangor and Kelantan. You see the gap is, the median is in Selangor 7,500 and in Kelantan is somewhere 3,000. That gap is huge. So if we keep on doing business as usual, this gap would only get wider. And this would create animosity. And I'm talking about only from the angle of the states. I have not even touched from the angle of the race. I have not even touched from the angle of the gender. And if you look, East Malaysia are clumped together in the low income, slow growth. If they are not careful, if they do not plan, if the nation doesn't plan as a nation in preparing for the spillover from Nusantara, this might get worse. But if they plan properly, this might get better. So let us go back to the Maqasid, like I said. You know, we always have this thinking, oh, Sustainable Development Goals, Millennium Development Goals, ESG, the Westerners are coming up with good plans, good blueprint, wonderful ideas, something that the world will prosper together. But just take a couple of minutes to go back. What is Maqasid? Of course, you know, there are different school of thoughts which put the principle of Maqasid at 6 or 7. We'll go to the one universally accepted, which is the 5. So what is Maqasid? Maqasid is all about protection. The key word of Maqasid is protection. So when you talk about protection, protection of what? Protection of deed, protection of intellectual, protection of and protection of your wealth and so on. And if you go deeper on the micros of it, then you will realize all the 17 SDGs are actually already embedded and inscribed in the Maqasid concept. So that's why I said, why are we not going back to the true teachings? Why are we not embracing to the true principles of Maqasid? What is Maqasid? Maqasid is basically the responsibility. Whose responsibility? You and me. We have been appointed as a caliph. We have to preserve. We have to preserve it for the next generation. We have to preserve it for the family. We have to preserve it. We have to preserve and protect. So if you go back to the 17 SDGs, what is 17 SDGs? Eradicating poverty, reducing income inequality, reducing gender inequality, protecting life above sea, life under the sea. What is this? These are all embedded and enshrined here. So, you know, it's not something that we are alien to. It is something that we should be breathing, we should be embracing, and we should be institutionalizing inside us as a person, inside our organization, inside our community. So let me bring you back to the Malaysian blueprint framework from the 1970s. If you realize, we have come up with many wonderful blueprints which are supposedly sustainable. Before, much before the MDGs, we already had what we call the National Economic Policy 1971. What is this National Economic Policy? This National Economic Policy is a result, remember that thing that we want to forget, May 13, 1969, we realized that May 13 riot 1969, it started off because of economic imbalance. It started because of this economic imbalance created animosity among the races. The Bumiputras were lagging in economy. The non-Bumiputras was controlling the economy. Thus, our great forefathers, you know, the policymakers at that point of time, they said, look, the Bumis are the most vulnerable and fragile group, and we have to give them assistance. We have to help them in order for us to close the gap. See, in 1971, Malaysia was already talking about sustainable. I will come back to you if we are already talking about it, but where did we go wrong? We will come back to that in a short while. So in 1971, at least in the context of Malaysia, we were already talking about SDG, but in a different context. We were talking about the SDG. We are saying that there is economic imbalance. There is a opportunity imbalance between the races. Bumiputra is lagging. In fact, we measured. We said Bumiputra are lagging, and we have a target. So we give 20 years. We call it this National Economic Policy Plan, Dasar Ekonomi Baharu, 20 years for us to give opportunity to create entrepreneurs, to create wealthy people, to give human capital assistance and so on. Our target was at the end of 20 years, the Bumiputras should be at least on par, and there should not be any racial imbalances. Did it materialize? To a certain extent, yes, but majority, no. That's why there was a need. We realized there was a need for it to be continued. So thus comes what we call National Development Policy, which was a continuance of National Economic Policy. So again, 1991, we came up with this plan. Did we manage to achieve? Again, we did manage bits and pieces here, but we still realized no. Then came what is called, Then came in 2009 what is called One Malaysia. What is One Malaysia? Again, One Malaysia is all about we as a nation progressing together, enjoying the wealth of the nation together. No groups are left out, no states are left out. And we had another vision, which was Vision 2020, but Vision 2020 was slightly off track. Remember when I said Vision 2020 was crafted when most of the countries in the world, nations in the world, were targeting high-income countries. So sustainability was not part of the agenda at that point of time. But then again, Vision 2020 has its own strength of, for us to move technologically and so on. And now, what do we have? We have SPV 2030. This SPV 2030 is specifically crafted, designed to be synchronized with SDGs. That's why I said the ending date is the same, 2030, 2030. But this SPV 2030 is on a macro level for Malaysia. What does it mean? What does it translate to? Shared prosperity value. What are the underlying pillars? What are the underlying fundamentals? Simple. The nation's wealth, the nation's prosperity should be shared among all the races, doesn't matter the gender, doesn't matter the states, doesn't matter the area, and so on. Then there was another small mini blueprint, which is called Keluarga Malaysia or Malaysian family. So this Keluarga Malaysia, if you realize, the whole idea about it was the policymakers, the ministers, the ministries, the agencies, they realize every time we talk about a policy, a long-term blueprint and everything, people have the wrong perception. It's the job of the policymakers, it's the job of the government, it's the job of the agency, it's the job of the GLC. They realize. So everybody was saying that, oh, it's none of my job, they have to do. So there comes Keluarga Malaysia, which the intention is very noble. Again, all these policies, the intentions are wonderful, noble. So Keluarga Malaysia was trying to explain to you in a layman way, look, we are a family. Does not matter the race, the religion, and the states and the areas, we are family. So Keluarga Malaysia was trying to instill it in a micro way, saying that, how would you want your family to be? Would you want your family where the eldest brother and the eldest sister is well off, the youngest brother is so poor? Would you want that kind of situation? Of course you do not want. You want all the members of the family to prosper together, to enjoy the wealth and the prosperity of the family together. So that is the whole noble idea of all these concepts, from the national economic policy right up to the Malaysian family to the SPV. So where did we go wrong? So this is what I have also personally found out. I'm more involved in a lot of these applied researchers. I've been trying to champion these two things. I realize the biggest glaring weakness in all these policies is measuring and reporting. For example, the national economic policy, the people only realized towards the end of the policy in the 1991, then only they realized, oh, we did not achieve our target. Then the second policy, national development policy, only towards the end people realized, oh, we missed the target. Why? Because there is no periodical measurement and there is no periodical reporting. I've been trying to champion this. My team in Center of Excellence in Islamic Social Finance has been trying to champion this. I do write a lot on this. I do go on the media a lot on this. I keep saying to them, look, you can have a wonderful blueprint on paper, but who is going to ensure? So this is where we need to measure. So we need to have a scorecard. What are we trying to do? For example, you want to help some entrepreneurs in the Bumiputra? Okay, how much are you allocating? So first quarter, how much have you spent? How many people have you managed to help? What is the gap that you have managed to close? So if you do this on periodical, doesn't matter quarterly. If you think quarterly is too heavy, half yearly. If you think half yearly is too heavy, annually, nothing more. You cannot go beyond that. So you have to report to whom? To the Prime Minister? To the Cabinet? No. To the stakeholders, the most important stakeholder. Who? The people. And then you will have the buy-in from the people. And when you report, you have to say, look, I have allocated this much for this group. Okay, for example, I have allocated this much to rebuild the houses or the schools in Sarawak. First quarter, okay, I've managed to repair 2 houses. Why? You targeted 4. Why only 2? Oh, we face this problem. These are the challenges. You have to share those challenges. For example, I give you a real example, and this is public. You can go and double check. In the previous budget, we allocated 200 million to repair the dilapidated schools in Sarawak. You know how much was spent? 14 million at the end of the budget. Why? Oh, because there's a problem. Schools in Sarawak is sitting on a customary land, so it's difficult for the. Why you did not report? Why year in year out? You know this problem existed. You know these are the challenges, but year in year out you're proudly saying, "Oh, I allocated 200 million." Next year comes in, I allocated 200 million. But the reality, you only spent a small portion of it. Why? Because nobody measures. Why? Because nobody reports. So how do you expect to have the buy-in? And at least if you say, look, we have targeted to do this, but we face this problem. And when you report, then there would be some others will be offering you, maybe you need to do this, maybe, you know, and others. This is how we need to culturalize. And if like I said, this is something that I have been on the ground and I have been championing, I've been trying to change. I said, culturalize measuring and reporting. And we have to do it periodically. It has to be sustainable. You cannot measure and report the first year and then you forget about it. Then we will repeat the same mistake. National Economic Policy, 20 years, did not achieve target. National Development Policy, 20 years, we did not achieve the target. Why? Because you wait so late until the end and then only you realize, oh, actually, you know, we did not achieve. Oh, why? Oh, because we faced this problem. Why didn't you tell? Nobody asked. So when we measure and report, and then we have the buy-in from the stakeholders, then only you can have assistance from many groups. Okay, I'm going to stop here just for a while. Azrul, can you play that short video? You might be wondering what's the video about. Only after that, when I tell you what was the video all about, this is a real project. Azrul, should I stop sharing or what?
Yes.
Stop sharing. Yes.
Stop sharing first.
I'll stop sharing, then I'll come back here later.
Yes. Hisham will share the video.
Aiman Yahya, KIT 04. Selama 5 bulan saya berada dalam urban farming, di mana kita diberi bantuan untuk memelihara ikan dan juga tanaman. Saya rasa sangat berbaloi dan memberi hasil yang lumayanlah untuk kami di sini. Macam saya sebelum ni bayam Brazil ni, saya dah 2 kali tuai. Maknanya dalam 500 gram. Dan saya pun boleh buat crispy bayam Brazil. Masa pokok cili ni, sebelum ni memang saya tak pandai lah. Saya tak kerti nak menggunakan tanaman yang tanpa tanah. Tapi ni bila dah ada, dah diajar, diberi tunjuk ajar oleh pihak abang kami dan juga Profesor Tim dan juga Tuan Haji serta AJK yang lain. Jadi kita dah mendapat ilmu dan bagaimana untuk nak memberi pokok kita lebih hasil, lebih mendapat pokok yang segar berasaskan daripada najis dari ikan. Hasil daripada ternakan dan juga tanaman kita di sini, kita bukan saja untuk jualan ataupun untuk makanan keluarga kita, tetapi juga saya ada juga sama-sama beri jiran-jiran untuk merasa bagaimana hasil yang kita usahakan di sini. Feedback daripada jiran sangat menggembirakan. Ikan ni kita goreng, dia goreng garing, dia kata sangat sedap. Isi tu sangat kenyal lah, bukan berair lah. Isi ikan tu sangat garing. Macam sayuran ni, kita buat crispy, kita bagi, dia kata daun ni pun sangat segar, rasa segar, sedap. Memang jiran-jiran semua kata memang kalau diberi peluang mereka juga nak menyertai program ini. Hubungan kejiranan kita, saya daripada flat Sri Rincing, Pangsapuri Sri Rincing, dan kami diajak sama-sama membuat program di sini di Seksyen 5 Anjung Murni. Hubungan sangat akrab, sangat mesra. Kita pun dapat bertukar-tukar pandangan, pendapat, dan juga kita dapat pertolongan bantuan lah. Andai kata kita keluar daerah ke, kita ada urusan yang penting. Jadi sahabat-sahabat yang dekat sini akan membantu kita sama-sama untuk menjaga ikan kita dan juga sayuran kita. Dan hubungan kekeluargaan kita ni setiap hujung minggu hari Ahad akan datang ramai-ramai lah buat potluck kat sini. Okay, bagi saya memang banyak membantulah kita daripada golongan staff ni dari segi sayuran untuk makanan kita di rumah lah. Andai kata kita memang kehabisan duit ke, di sini kita dapat, tak ada sayur kita petik je kat sini. Ikan kita boleh tangkap di ikan dalam ni dan kita boleh bagi anak makan, atau kita boleh jual ikan ni, sayur ni. Jika diberi peluang kepada saya untuk menambah pendapatan, untuk membesarkan lagi penternakan ikan dan juga penanaman sayuran ni, saya sangat berbesar hati, berminat sangat menyertai program yang seperti ini.
Okey, macam untuk tanaman kangkung ni, satu kek ni dia menghasilkan lebih kurang 1 kg setiap 2 minggu. Jadinya kebiasaannya saya akan kongsikan, saya bagi-bagi pada jiran-jiran, sahabat-sahabat yang mana nak. Setakat ni belum ada yang dijual lagi. Setakat untuk kita bagi-bagi pada kawan-kawan, pada jiran-jiran saja.
Jadi berpuas hati lah dengan
setakat ni, alhamdulillah semua berpuas hati. Setakat ni semua seronok lah dapat dapat kangkung free ni. Lagi satu dapat juga merapatkan lagi silaturahim sesama jiran, insya-Allah. Ya, sebenarnya dia menambah puasan sebab kita tahu hasil yang keluar tu bersih dan halal, suci. Maknanya kita tak ada rasa was-was untuk kita gunakan untuk kita makan. Jadi memang rasanya amat berpuas hati lah. Sangat berpuas hati dengan hasil yang keluar. Ini sebenarnya banyak membantu lah untuk menambahkan pendapatan keluarga. Jika boleh ditambahkan dari segi jumlah unit. Kalau kata untuk satu unit ni, insyaAllah cukup lah untuk keperluan, rasanya cukup untuk keperluan keluarga, maknanya untuk mengurangkan belanja isi rumah. Tapi kalau kata untuk menambah pendapatan tu seloknya biarlah lebih. Maksudnya jalan jumlah yang lebih daripada yang satu unit ni. Dan kalau kata kita boleh tambahkan lagi tu, memang saya berminat insyaAllah untuk tambahkan lagi bilangan supaya hasil yang dijual, hasil yang keluar tu yang kita dapat tu boleh dijual untuk sebagai satu pendapatan sampingan untuk keluarga.
Untuk saya lah, pendapat saya sendiri, lepas kita join program Urban Kit ni, kita rasa seronok dan macam rasa masa yang terluang tu kita boleh isi dengan benda yang berfaedah seperti tanam-tanaman kan, ikan semua. Kita rasa seronok lah join program ni. So bagi pendapat saya lah, dari segi untuk penambahan pendapatan kita dari dalam program ni, saya rasa dia sangat-sangat membantu dan dia boleh bagi kita macam untuk cari pendapatan yang lebih dari yang sebelum ni. Sebabnya orang kata program ni banyak bagi kita macam motivasi untuk kita lebih berkeyakinan, lebih semangat untuk uruskan sesuatu benda tu macam tu. So program ni sangat-sangat membantu lah untuk saya. Saya dapat motivasi ni, semangat, keyakinan ni daripada saya join program Urban Kit ni lah. Saya rasa semangat untuk memperkembangkan lagi ternakan ikan saya seperti dalam sangka sendiri macam tu. So untuk orang kata jangka masa yang panjang, untuk pendapatan jangka masa yang panjang, so saya sangat berminat dan orang kata lebih semangat. Saya rasa memang menambah kepuasan lah, memang dah tentu-tentulah kita rasa benda tu halal kan, macam bersih. Orang kata kita jaga sendiri kan, so kita nampak pembesaran ikan tu sendiri, so kita rasa benda tu terjamin dan kita semangat untuk teruskan projek-projek macam ni di masa akan datang. Untuk saya, seeloknya kita join lah program-program yang macam ni untuk meraih pendapatan yang lebih baik untuk family kita.
Thank you, Isham. Okay, I'll continue to share my screen. Oh. Okay, so you might be wondering, what does that video has to do with the session today? Remember when I said all of us have a role to play and all of us can contribute in a small micro way so that together it will become a bigger contribution. So the whole project was started. There are 500 families in that community. And out of those 500 families, 70 families are Asnaf. These are registered Asnaf with the state religious. So there is an income inequality gap. There's a wealth gap. So how for us to close the gap? It cannot be in the forms of cash assistance. It's not sustainable. So how can we help them? So we roped in one of the bigger Islamic banks. In this context is Maybank Islamic. And we went and discussed with them, explained to them, saying that, look, you have to live and breathe what is called value-based intermediation. Value-based intermediation is all about going beyond profit. I say, let us come up with some projects that we can help these people to have some supplementary income. And this supplementary income would at least take them out of the Asnaf group. At the same time, we want to do something which is halal, tayyib, and sustainable. Maybank Islamic agreed. We came up with a study. We engaged with Mardi to give us the technical know-how of engaging with this project. And we started off, we give them an urban kit farming. We kick it off with 60 families You see that just now is we had 3 different models. The one you saw just now is what we call community farming. Community farming means we have 30 units placed in an area under the Rukun Tetangga, which was assisting us in this. Another 25 units was placed in the respective Asnaf houses. Another 5 was placed in a mini community. Why? Because we want to do a feasibility study. Which one would be better, doing community farming or putting it in the respective houses? And we collected data. We collected data on the produce, on the harvest, and so on. And thank God, Alhamdulillah, the timing of the project was so perfect. When the first harvest of the vegetable was when the price of the vegetables was shooting up 200%, 300%. But then these people were self-reliant. Vegetable for them, because remember, there are 60 families. You have out of these 60 families, you have about 10 or 15 different vegetables which they can use for consumption, and they can also barter among them to have different. And then they have fish. This fish is not only for personal consumption, this fish is also for sale. And this sale was also assisted by the community itself, where you buy, membeli sambil beramal. So we could see we have just completed that project, and Alhamdulillah, Maybank is more than happy with us, and we are expanding it to other parts of the nation. So what we could see from here is we could tick the box for many sustainable development goals. We could tick the box for many maqasid, protection of wealth, protection of life, and everything. Why? Because we could give them nourished foods, halal and tayyib foods. We give them supplementary income. And then we also have intangible return. What are those intangible returns? Community empowerment. If you could see earlier, one of the participants was saying, that's how they spend their time together, and they feel happy. They know each other. The community becomes closer. There is no gap between rich and poor. So this is what I was saying earlier. You could do your role as a citizen, as a person in the community, as an employee, as an employer. So there are many ways for you to contribute to these sustainable goals. There's not one way. And what else we concluded from there? We also came out with a new product for the Islamic banking. Just wait for the launch by Maybank Islamic. We managed to convince them. We managed to design and deliver to them a product which is called blended financing. What we have told them, what we have explained, and what we have shown to them empirically, Islamic social finance is not all about charity. Islamic social finance can become a powerful instrument, even a commercial or semi-commercial product. So banks should not only be thinking along the old box, we need to think dynamically. Because there are some asnafs outside there, there are poor people outside there who has the potential. If you could see, there was one participant which triggered this, and now she's having 5 ponds of her own. She was so excited, and looking at the return and everything, she expanded on her own initiative. This is what we want to do. We always say that, the poor people are lazy, the poor people doesn't want to. No. If given opportunity, if given equal opportunity, which is all about inclusive and sustainable growth, equal opportunity. Why am I saying equal opportunity? Before this, these people does not enjoy equal opportunity. Whenever they apply for a financing, they do not have a track record. Neither they have any collaterals. They are excluded from the banking. They are excluded from the finance system. But when we blend together, that means a certain portion comes from the bank, another portion comes from Islamic social finance institution, some for consumption and some for business. And you can see they are better off. The community is better off. The asnaf are better off. The Maybank is better off. Now the Maybank has satisfaction. And now, inshallah, this will be launched into a new product, which is called, like I said, blended financing. Part of it is commercial, part of it is social. and the potential is great. Imagine if every community take this kind of opportunity to reduce the poverty, to reduce the income inequality within that community. And inshallah, we can be a better place. We can be a better nation. Stop putting all the responsibility on the policymakers. Stop putting all the responsibilities on the nation, on the ministers, on the agencies. We play our role. So my session today, even it's a 1 hour session, I have only one objective. My objective is for you, each and every one of you, to instill that you have a role to play for the community, for the nation, for the organization, for the institution, all to be contributing together to the sustainable development goal. And that is only one project that I have shared with you, and we have multiple projects like that. I am no Sharia scholar, like I said, I am an applied economist, and I work on all applied projects. And I have empirical data, empirical result, which shows that if given equal opportunity, there is every chance for us to eradicate poverty, to reduce income inequality. So there's a dashboard. This dashboard is normally reported periodically to the United Nations, and it is like, I don't know how far are we through the journey towards 2030. If you see the green arrows, means we have already we are on track on achieving things like no poverty. Malaysia have made a tremendous improvement. You know, our poverty rate in the 70s used to be 49.7%, and we managed to reduce it to 4.7% in year 2019. And because of the pandemic, it increases back to 5.4%, somewhere around there. Because this is what we call situational poverty. People become poor because of the pandemic, loss of income, you know, loss of source of income, and so on. And you could see affordable and clean energy, we are on track. Decent work and economic growth, we are on track. Quality education, we were on track, but somewhere we were derailed. Gender inequality, we are making the right progress, and so on. So like I said, just take a minute and look at all the 17 SDGs. You can easily put all the 17 SDGs into the Maqasid principles, which I have said. So of course, I have to give you both sides of the coin. Do we have challenges? Why we are facing problems? Of course, you know, when we have externalities happening, things like the pandemic COVID-19, it will derail us a bit from our targets. The flood, especially happening in the heart of the economic heartbeat of the nation, Klang Valley, that will derail. And the third, political instability. You know, when political instability happens, there are many things that would be wasted, money, time, energy, just going for them to strengthen their political. I have no flag, neither red, blue, red, whatever flag. I have no rocket, I have no moon, whatever it is. I'm a researcher, I'm an applied researcher, like I said. But the political instability is causing a huge dent in our efforts. And also we have unsustainable agriculture practices, you know, like slash and burn, though we have reduced it a lot. That's why we always have problems with our palm oil. You know, unsustainable logging, which causes flash floods, and so on. Okay, so in a nutshell, my session today is, you know, my dear children, my dear brothers, sisters, is let us start doing something. It can be a very small effort, it can be a big effort. It can be an effort of you as an individual. It can be an effort of you as a position bearer of a residential association, community, mosque committee, whatever community you are. It can be you as your own firm. It can be you as working in a regulatory. It can be you, whatever it is, we have a role to play, and we can play our role. Stop playing Tai Chi, you know, saying that that's none of my business, that's none of my responsibility. Remember, all of us, no exception. Every one of us will go 6 feet under. And every one of us would be asked when we are brought back, what have you done? How are you going to answer? How are you going to answer when the God asks you, what have you done when your house have so many luxury items and your neighbor was finding it difficult to put food on the table? What have you done when you have all the opportunities to send your kids to wonderful international school? Your neighbor can't even send the kid to school. What have you done when your community, when your nation was showing such a high income per capita, showing a rich status, developed status, but yet you have still homeless people, you still have poor people? How are we going to answer? Some of you might be saying, I have given my donation, I paid my taxes, I paid my zakat. But there is much more that we can do. Okay, so like I said, I'm more than happy to take some questions, and I'm more than happy to explain. There's one brother Halil. I think he asked what is the name of the project that I did. Okay, that project is actually is a small portion of a bigger project that we are doing. And the bigger project is we are trying. Many of you might not realize we have a Center of Excellence in Islamic Social Finance in INSEAD University. Wait for the official announcement later, but it's already up and running. So for the last 7 years I've been in INSEAD, I worked a lot on applied projects. I worked how to bring this Islamic social finance instrument, at least with banking and others, to the mainstream. Among the projects that I have worked on with International Federation of Red Crescent, IFRC, the international one which is based in Geneva, as well as the Foreign Commonwealth Office in the United Kingdom, how we can mobilize ISF instruments in a pre-disaster. The current project that I have showed to you is actually a bigger project that we are trying to say that, you see, Islamic social finance is the most purest of form of an instrument that is closest to Islamic finance tenets. When you talk about inclusiveness, when you talk about equitability, you talk about fair, you talk about justice, ISF is the most closest, the most purest. However, ISF is always thought as something which is so small, something which is only works in a minute way. So it's our challenge here, it's our responsibility. We have taken the responsibility. We say Islamic social finance has huge potential if given a chance to be on the forefront. Alhamdulillah, the value, because I find it easier because the value-based intermediation framework actually it was designed, delivered by the INSEAD team, and I was in the team. Value-based takaful, I was also heading the team. So this is a challenge for us. So we are trying how Islamic social finance can be the mainstream of a bank. You know, bank is not only about commercial 100%, but Islamic social finance can be semi-commercial. That means, you know, you can show the real value-based intermediation side. So there's a project we are working with the Maybank, inshallah. Like I said, yes, Azrina, is every small steps count. You know, is how we want to contribute. Okay, some of you can contribute, can carry on and say, you know, I go and sadaqah here, I go sadaqah there. The moment people give anything, I'll sadaqah. That's good thing, alhamdulillah. You know, today is a Jumu'ah barakah. Alhamdulillah, keep on doing. But more than that, you know, you can do more than that. You know, but beyond that, trust me. I've been involved in this project for quite some time. The personal satisfaction that you get, that's number one. Number two, inshallah, the barakah will come back to you, to your children, to your spouses, to your family, to your community. I did mention just now the intangible good, intangible return. The community is empowered. I'm more than welcome any of you who wants to come and visit the urban farm. And inshallah, we'll be launching another 100 Asnaf families in different regions. We are also working on with Maybank to bring it to some of the what we call orphanage as well as pusat tahfiz, so that they can be self-sustainable. You know, when they have this urban farming, they can sell the produce. They do not have to depend from other people already. You know, so once you donate, it will be sustainable for them too. And at least halal and tayyib, you know, especially in tahfiz, they need something, you know, that goes inside the body to be pure. This is the opportunity. So I am more than happy if any of you who wants to come and join and us or want to collaborate with the organization, institution, please do so. Like I said, I'm also already 54. Not sure, you know, how longer I would be on this place called Earth. So let us do our bits and bats. So I'm more than happy to take a question. You can either type in the chat box, or you can simply ask. So for now, I'll pass back to my good brother. I'm not sure, my two good brothers here, Azrul and Hisham. Who do I pass back, Azrul?
To me.
Okay, I'll pass back to my dearest brother, Azrul.
Okay, can you ask questions from the floor? You can please unmute yourself. You can ask questions directly to Prof, or you can just type your question in the chat area.
Thank you, Sharifah. I take that as a compliment, Sharifah. That's not a question, that's a compliment. Thank you, Sharifah. Okay, like I said, today is not a lecture. Today is more as a sharing on a blessed Friday. And I always ever ready. And I know my good brothers here, Azrul, Hisham, and I saw my good sister, the Shakira just now. They always have in heart, you know, expanding the knowledge, you know, empowering the alumni. So this is a way, you know, I'm more than happy. For example, if some of the alumni say to Brother Azrul, okay, Brother Azrul, let us do on alumni. We share a community and we want to do something on this. I'm more than happy to assist. Okay.
Any questions from the floor?
Most welcome, Dr. Razli. I'm happy that, you know, I can share a bit of knowledge, inshallah.
It seems everyone is shy to ask questions.
Yeah, I thought we only have one shy in the office, but today we have 25 shies.
Any ideas, comments, or? Yes,
okay, if I may, my name is Halif.
Yes,
I'm taking one of your classes actually. So and Islamic finance is actually quite new to me. But yeah, I've been reading up. Okay, so I equate some of this to probably like social enterprises in Mila, right? And so some of the views of social enterprise is that the sustainability of social enterprises, when we look at it, really, it doesn't sustain because people look at the social side first, whereas they should look at the business model first and make it a sustainable business model, and then, you know, use the proceeds from that to then be fed back into the social elements, right? Yeah, so I just wanted to get your view on that, and you know, I'm actually very interested to see. You mentioned just now you have some empirical data in terms of some of the experiments, right? If you'd be able to share some of that, because part of that is like I think if this can be publicized, I think there'll be a lot more organizations like organizations like Maybank, Islamic, who would go on board, right? Because it'll be very much aligned to one of the biggest goals as a business, which is to make some economic gains, right? So I just want to get your view on that. Yeah.
Wonderful, Halif. Actually, you summarize it quite well, Halif. In fact, the one I showed you is just one portion of the suggestion or the thing that we gave them. The second, we also, you know, there is urban farming. We also have vertical farming, and we also have social enterprise. This social enterprise, how we build the model was actually how Maybank would give some financial assistance in terms of a blended financing. If you could remember back, the word I keep using is blended financing. That means a portion of it will come in the form of financing. There's another form which is in the form of assistance, with condition that there is a true social enterprise. When we talk about social enterprise, Halif, it's not only that we call it a sustainable business. We talk about how it is environmental friendly. Even the urban farming, if you see, the green aspect of that, I did not touch much on that, but then it's also green. So with same, we go to the social enterprise, Halif. For me, we should be able to measure the immeasurable contribution of the social enterprise. However, correctly, like what you have put, what like Henry Ford used to say, Henry Ford says, a business that does not think about profit will die. Same case here, Alif. We don't want to create something based on charity, Alif. We want to create a new breed which is called a sustainable activity. So yes, Halif, I'm more than happy to share some of the data with you where, like I said, we have measurement. In fact, we have a big project we call Social Impact Indicator. So where every project, we measure the social impact. And we measure it in a very simple way, very simple scorecard. And then we pass it back to the clients so the clients can come out and report. So how it works is when the client report the impact they have created, it will return in terms of business for them. New customers, increased business, and so on. So I'm more than happy to share whenever we do, inshallah.
Thanks, Prof. Yeah, maybe I separately, I just wanna get
boleh.
people punya ni. Yeah, very interesting. Actually, okay, thanks, Prof.
Thanks. Any other questions? Also, a gentle reminder, I think Brother Azrul have put in the feedback form. So this feedback is quite important for them to what do you call better plan and do others. So please do help them.
Prof, Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Nisa here, Prof.
Yes, I can identify your voice, Nisa.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I just want comments in term because I involved with agriculture. The challenges is like the mindset, Prof. So for me as a young student, sometimes we face like if we give them idea or educate them, especially in the outer islands, they said told us, you are still young, we are all asam garam lebih kurang macam tu, Prof. So how this, for example, like we this is for problem, our responsibility, not just you concern for your own. For example, effect disaster during agriculture, something just like, okay, I just said my family first. So sometimes we just like, we give the charity and monitoring them. Okay, well, but after we come back to, for example, go to back to Jakarta, their life to us sometimes from. So how to face these challenges, to educate them, this is for their responsibility to improve their economic by, they know this is their responsibility to improve, to gain their income, not our responsibility to make them know better about this.
Yeah, agree, Nisa. Agree. I these are some of the challenges that we face, Nisa. But like I said, Nisa, it takes a lot of effort and experience. And Nisa, yeah, I totally agree. Some of them are so dependent, and they say, it's your job to help me, your job to provide, your job to do this. But this is how I said, we have to go to the right people. For example, the project that I have done in the community, the one I showed the video, Nisa, we do a preliminary session first. That means we go to the imam first. You see, the Imam who reads the sermon every Friday, so the Imam will include it in his sermon, saying that, look, you know, the hand that gives is better than the hand that receives. You know, God will never change your future unless you try. So these are the things that we need to plan carefully. We cannot be going straight, you know, gung-ho and say, okay, this is a project, you do, you're better off. No, we have to attack it slowly, Nisa, inshallah. But trust me, Nisa, when you think good things about other people, inshallah, it will return to you. And don't give up, Nisa. Never give up. Never give up. I tell you, the most beautiful thing about doing this is your self-satisfaction, and you can actually see the return that you get in terms to you, happiness, in terms of your family, in terms of barakah. Seriously, Nisa, keep on doing. And don't give up, Nisa, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Prof.
Any other questions?
Senyap, Prof. I think tak ada kot.
Okay.
Okay, can we? Okay.
Yeah, please.
If there are no further questions from the audience, okay, we would like to thank Associate Professor Dr. Barom for the very informative and inspirational session. Okay, we have come to an end of our program. We hope to see everyone again in our next upcoming events. So please stay tuned. Okay, thank you and have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Barom.
Most welcome. Alhamdulillah.